Hi. Greetings from the Great Sage. Before we start, please subscribe and hit the notification bell icon and don't miss any contents. This is the light novel of that time I got reincarnated as a slime. If you haven't watched previous video, I will leave the link on the description box or you can click here. Let's start. This is Tensura Light Novel Volume 16. Tensura Light Novel. Volume 16. The End of the Game. Chapter 1. The Betrayal. Emperor Rudra was replaced by Michael, and Phantom King Feldway had left. It wasn't settled, but the feeling took its toll on everyone. There were still some uncertainties, but for now I wanted to celebrate everyone's safety. We would deal with the cleanup and future plans later. That said, Carrion, Free, and the rest of the group had gone into an evolutionary sleep, so I arranged for Tensura to send them off discreetly. I'm sorry to bother you when you're tired too. Please do not worry about me. I hope you take your time to relax and regain your strength. Although it was a bit embarrassing, I'd accept the kindness for now. There were other things to think about once everything was settled down, but for now, we'd have a party to lift our spirits. I wanted to invite Laplace, but he was already gone when I sent Diablo to pick him up. In his own way, he was worried about his friends. In that light, there was no need to find and invite him. Since our agreement to fight together was still in effect, I would help him if he needed it, but for now, I decided to leave him alone. With that, I returned to the capital city of Rimuru, where I heard an unexpected report. A corner of the outskirts of the city had been burned down. Geld and his men had protected it, so the damage was not as bad as it looked. The fire was prevented from spreading by destroying the surrounding buildings, so the human casualties were minor. The fact that there were no fatalities was good news. However, there was also bad news. Nevertheless, everything that happened was after the fact. There was no point in panicking now, so I decided to hide my impatience and listen to the report from Geld. But Geld was not the only one lined up for the report. The current location was the banquet hall. The executives who had played such an active role this time were seated, and Shuna, Haruna-san, and Gabichi's subordinates were busy preparing meals for everyone. I wondered if it would be a good idea to conduct the interview in such a situation, but it had to be done because of the urgency. The seat to my right was occupied by Veldora, who still stubbornly refused to leave it, even knowing that he had no intention of listening. Veldora's selfishness was nothing new to me, so I was used to dealing with him. It was easier to leave him alone rather than to persuade him, so it was best just not to bother. So, with Veldora as on my right, Benimaru was sitting on my left. Behind me, Sean and Diablo were standing by, ready to listen to what I had to say. Aside from Diablo, Sean should have been eating with me, but she insisted that it could wait. It seemed to violate her self-imposed rule, so I let her do as she liked. So with that, the important thing was those who were here to report. Geld was sitting in front of me. And Adalman sat facing Benimaru, looking uncomfortable. It seemed that his evolution had succeeded and the atmosphere around him had changed a little. I would ask him to report about it later. In front of Veldora was Ramrus's seat and Trainee-san and Beretta were standing behind, looking after her. Incidentally, it was Cherries who was pouring Veldora a drink. Ramrus herself was engrossed in her meal, disregarding the report. Well, I had faith that Master would be fine. When the upper levels of the labyrinth were blown off by Master's reckless sister, I thought it might be dangerous, but I had faith that Master would be fine. That's why I wasn't worried about anything from the beginning. Ramrus proudly said this and happily drank the juice. Her words are a mixture of lies and truth, but no one pointed it out. Kwahahaha. Of course. Even if the opponent was my sister, I didn't have an ounce of trepidation. Still, although just a tiny bit careless, it's all the fault of those cowardly interlopers who targeted me and ruined my victory. This guy is just talking nonsense. Even I had been feeling scared, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Frankly, an evolved Velgrant was pretty dangerous. Even if Veldora wanted to beat her, he only had a 50% chance, so he should refrain from making big statements. That's what I thought, but those who were listening were all cheering. As expected of Veldora-sama. I have much to learn from you. Cherries nodded gravely. It was a hell of a fight. I thought I had evolved and gotten stronger, but I realized that I am not quite there yet. Benimaru followed suit and said those words from his heart. Veldora seemed to listen with a satisfied look of triumph. However, Ramrus's comments stopped Veldora's laughter. You're always so careless, Master. But then again, there's probably nothing to worry about now. Probably. What are you talking about, Ramrus? See? I knew his words couldn't be true. Talking too much can sometimes drive you to extremes. Because right now, that man I'm just relieved that I have my master. That man? Ramras's words were very disturbing. What? No, I'm invincible, but there may be times when I'm not feeling as well. Veldora, realizing what he had done and that he had dug a hole, suddenly began making excuses too. But I think it's too late now, so I would just forget about it. This was a common occurrence anyway, so I just wouldn't worry about it. I was more concerned about Vesta-san, who was sitting at the edge of the room. I decided to leave Veldora and the others alone and ask what happened to the rest of the group. Immediately after Rimuru left for the Empire, those who were left behind immediately went into crisis mode. The euphoric atmosphere after the celebration, which had remained until a moment ago, disappeared in an instant. The same was true for Ramrus and the others who had returned to the innermost part of the labyrinth. The evolution of the Dragon Lords under her command had been successfully completed and Ramrus was in a good mood. However, when Rimuru and the others were dispatched on an emergency mission, she felt uneasy. Ramrus wanted to spend every day happily and felt that the Jura Tempest Federation was a wonderful utopia that could fulfill her wish. For Ramrus, who had spent so much time in solitude and whose loneliness had only been dulled by the presence of spirits, this place had become an important thing that she never wanted to lose again. That is why she was afraid of losing it. As always, Ramrus felt that Rimuru would be fine, but for some reason, she could not shake off the bad feeling. That premonition would come true. Velgrund, Veldora's sister, had attacked and destroyed the labyrinth Ramrus was so proud of. The labyrinth was physically indestructible, but it was the power of the true dragons who could make this possible. When Ramrus saw Velgrund, she was reminded of ancient memories that she had forgotten. A long time ago, not long after Ramrus was born, she remembered seeing a rampaging Veldora, much like the great Veldanava. As the name Storm Dragon implied, Veldora's main attribute was wind, but it also controlled space and water. Combined with tremendous amount of magicule second only to Veldanava, Veldora was a raging storm itself. It was no exaggeration to say that Veldora, the very incarnate of a natural disaster, was the strongest on Earth. However, his two sisters possessed a power even more transcendent, reaching another level. Velgrund, who had control over heat, was of the flame attribute, which was the worst matchup with Veldora's wind attribute. She could make the difference in the amount of mana worthless, standing above Veldora with her overwhelming presence. However, that alone was not bad. The real threat was Velsard, the eldest sister. Velsard's attribute was ice. But its essence was not water, but something else. Velsard used her powers to hide her attributes so that no one would know. Ramrus had been told by Veldanava and knew the truth about Velsard. No, she once knew. Unfortunately, she had forgotten it in the course of her many incarnations. No. It's not that she had forgotten completely, but it took Ramrus a long time to dig up old memories. That's why Ramrus was glad that Velgrund was the opponent this time. If Velsard had been his enemy, then Veldora would not have stood a chance. What Ramrus remembered was the raging Veldora being obliterated by Velsard with a single blow, and Velsard's icy cold eyes that took it all for granted. That is why it was Ramrus who was most worried about Veldora at that time. Ramrus jumped around the room in circles, seemingly unable to calm down. "Are you alright, master?" Such a question was the sign of Ramrus's anxiety. But at the same time, it was also an expression of care for Veldora, with the intention of saying that it was okay to run away. And yet, Veldora responded. "Don't worry. You guys just sit there and give witness to my bravery." For some reason, revealed a look of seeming relief, as if there was not a hint of unease in his heart. He left the labyrinth alone, full of confidence. At this point, Veldora looked very dazzling to Ramrus. She remembered the way he used to be, and his growth until now struck a chord with her. After Veldora's sortie against Velgrund, Ramrus looked around at the faces of those remaining in the control room. Cherries was left here after being told by Veldora that he was unable to help. But that was just the way it was. Cherries would be useless against Velgrund, who had control over heat. As always, Beretta was the one who remained calm and collected. His usual demeanor calmed Ramrus down. Those who had been transformed into Dryas dull Dryads by Rimuru's hands were also under Beretta's command as operators. There were now 24 of them. Since Rimuru had evolved them in his spare time, they had all become excellent labyrinth keepers. Trainee and her sisters Trya and Triss were also there. They were watching over Ramrus with their usual calm expressions. The rest of the group, in addition to Vesta and Dino, were recent additions to the research staff. They were Shinji Tanimura, Mark Lauren and Sheen Liuxing, along with their two apprentice assistants, Lucius and Raymond. These five were treated as Gadra's subordinates when the labyrinth entered the war. However, now that Gadra was away, they were helping Ramrus as her assistants in the control room. Everyone was looking back at Ramrus with concern. So Ramrus shouted out cheerfully. "Really? I'm not worried at all. Master is definitely going to win. If he loses, Rimuru will take care of everything, I'm sure of it. Besides, Master is invincible as long as you don't overlook him. With those words, Ramrus calmed herself down. Valdor and Rimuru would surely bring back their peaceful life, she thought. The anxiety was lifted from the scene, but the incident occurred shortly thereafter. Warning. There's an intruder. Alpha, the chief operator, shouted loudly. Hearing this, everyone switched their minds and went into their battle stances. Display it on the monitor. As soon as Beretta's order was given, the screen split to show the scene of the invasion. Seeing a figure standing there, Ramrus couldn't help but yelp. Wait, isn't that an angel? It's incarnated and transformed, but it's also giving off a foreign dangerous feeling. In fact, the intruders were very foreign indeed. The pure white clothes were covered with mythical equipment that emitted a black and gold glow, and the long black hair also carried a glow like fragmented starlight, which further highlighted the beauty of this person. On her back, 3 pairs of 6 pure white wings fluttered, drawing attention to her even more. Estimated amount of energy, here it comes. This is. Alpha was stammering. What's wrong? Report quickly. Alpha regained his composure when Trainee rushed him. The first one has an existence value of over 3 million. The next 5 have been measured at between 400,000 and 700,000 each. Alpha's statement succeeded in freezing the control room. It was the hidden purpose of the labyrinth to quantify the level of lifeforms and construct relevant databases. The main idea was to help with crisis management by accumulating the necessary information about the battles within the maze as they were displayed on the screen. Since there were many such cases, it had become common sense that an existence value was only a general reference. The pseudo-awakened claimant was said to have had an unstable amount of magicules, but since Rimuru had once remarked that he was about 700,000 to 800,000, right? Having an existence value of 800,000 or more was defined as special S-class, according to Rimuru's statement. Furthermore, because some of them had existence values exceeding 1 million, it was decided that they would be called the million classes for ease of understanding. No way, I didn't expect it to be a super-awakened, million class, it's a seraph anyway. Ramrus was in a state of shock and had involuntarily stopped halfway through her sentence. Beretta nodded in return and then went on to explain. The highest angel is trouble, huh? That's nasty. And even the followers are S-class. With the floor guardians still asleep, it may be a bit difficult to intercept them. But we have to do something. Ramrus replied hurriedly. As if to calm her down, Trainee softly smiled and responded. That is true, Ramrus-sama. So that is why, allow me to go out and meet the enemy. Tria and Triss stood up to follow her. Of course, I will go with you. Sister, I'm coming with you too. Ramrus heard this, but instead of calming down, she started to panic even more. Hey, wait a minute. You've gotten stronger, but you still lose to them numerically. Yufufu, no problem. Existence values are just a rough estimate, so let's take this opportunity to prove the strength of Ramrus-sama's followers to everyone. Tria and Triss nodded vigorously in agreement. Ramrus wanted to stop her, but she had no other choice. However, she felt that the idea of putting only her beloved trainee sisters in danger was unacceptable. It's still wrong. Rimuru and Master said that we should only fight battles we can win. She could manipulate the labyrinth to buy more time. Hopefully, things would get better somehow. Ramrus was on the verge of escaping reality. Cherries admonished her in a dissuading manner. Ramrus-sama, I'm afraid you'll have much difficulty stalling for time. We cannot let them get close to the level where the guardians are sleeping, and if we leave them there, they might destroy the important facilities. Therefore, I think we should intercept them. I will also go out myself, and I'd like your permission to do so. Now that Veldora was gone, Cherries was the strongest person in this place. That is why he decided that he must do something about it. Beretta Dono, I will leave you in charge of protecting Ramrus-sama. Understood. Leave Ramrus-sama to me. Beretta did not need to be told that. If the trainee sisters were to go out, he believed that he was the only one who could protect Ramrus. Alpha and the others did the same. Everyone in the room stood up at once and swore to protect Ramrus. Not to be outdone, Shinji and the others also shouted. We'll do our best too. Oh, yes. Since we've been taken care of here, we need to return the favor. Agreed. We even have the resurrection bracelet, so we'll do our best, even if we die. That's right. We Imperial soldiers should have been killed a long time ago, and now we have the chance to prove ourselves. Indeed. Otherwise, Master Gadra will be angry with me. The air in the control room relaxed as the 5 men began chatting lightly in the face of such a formidable opponent. Ramrus also took a deep breath and showed a big smile. If that's the case, then do it with all your might. Even if you die, you can come back to life with me, so there's no need to spare anything. I'll send Dragon Lord Chan and the others to you, so make sure you win. Everyone nodded their heads in agreement. Then, they quickly moved into action, following their assigned roles. That's all for today. Hope you guys enjoy this video. please check my other YouTube videos. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe and hit the notification icon, and don't miss any updates.